Welcome home to a home made homier with Baird Brothers Fine Hardwoods. Inspiration starts at BairdBrothers.com and is turned into reality when high-quality hardwoods are delivered right to your home. Baird Brothers has the latest design trends, shiplap and skinny lap interior siding, antique oak rustic flooring, and, well, you'll find them all at BairdBrothers.com. Ordered easily, delivered conveniently, enjoyed comfortably.
From the Steel Valley Soccer Studios in Boardman, with Tim Walsh, Dan Conley and Chris Platten. This is Pitchmen.
We're back. Year number 6 going into it for us. Dan Conley, Tim Walsh, Chris Platten's off teaching. Lord knows what they're allowing him to do there. So
season 3 already.
let's hope it's something good. We'll talk about, let's see, games of the week. How do we decide what teams should be on games of the week? Dan, what do you think we do?
What everyone thinks we do is we look at the schedule and pick the 2 best games we can find. And that's what we try to do. But what we do is we figure out what days work for our schedules first. And then once we figure out that, we try to pick the best game we can. We try not to run teams back-to-back weeks. We try to see everybody we can. I don't want to say make it fair, but for ourselves too, we need to see everybody. It's not fair to the kids we don't see to be able to rate them if we don't know how they play. So it schedules how they line up with each other. We try to pick the best game, and if there's multiple the same team we've already seen, we try to pick one we haven't seen yet. Yeah,
we want to spread the wealth. No one wants to see us watching the same 3 teams year in and year out because they just happen to be the best teams playing the best teams in our area. We also want to check on players who we are watching, players that are like, hey, we heard this player's really good. We want to go see them live and in person. We want to see the things that aren't in the stat sheet, that don't show up on the box score. We want to see how they do at halftime. How do they warm up, like you said? There's a lot of reasons why, but first and foremost, it's each of us has 2 kids. Our kids are very involved in a lot of things, so it has to fall within, hey, can we get people there?
Right.
So
sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't, but it's helped us out quite a bit.
Yeah, sometimes it's, you and Chris Chris by yourselves, and I'm listening to it while I'm, walking the neighborhood with my kids. But yeah, we just pick, games. There's some games that at the beginning of the year we're like, we can't wait for these 2 teams to play because they're the 2 best teams. It's going to be the best game. It's exciting. Typically, we pick the right game if when a team scores, the fans go nuts.
Yeah.
If someone scores and it's just like one person going, woo. That's probably not a great game to be at, but we're there because we want to spread the wealth.
Of course, and it's also cool when we see social media talking about their game being the game of the week, either a soccer account or a school account or just fans or parents. It's cool when they go on there and talk about their kid being on TV and stuff like that.
Yeah, so hopefully we tried out some new stuff last year and we got a little bit better at it. So this year it's going to be even better. We got some new intros and outros stuff and some new audio stuff. So it's going to each year hopefully getting better and better. When it comes down to those games that we go see, player of the game, that one's usually the toughest. It's got to be from someone who's the winning team. Or if it's a tie, it really kind of oh, geez, what are we going to do here? It doesn't necessarily have to be who scores the most goals. But if someone scores a hat trick and they win 3-0, well, they really impacted the game.
Right. It's one of those things where I hope that the game figures itself out. I hope it's not us trying to figure out who the player of the game was. I hope that the game tells us who the player is that impacted it the most. Like you said, it's not always who scores the most goals. It's who had the biggest impact on the game, no matter where they play out on the field. I mean, last year, I think we picked more goalies than we ever have.
I think so too.
Because they did have a huge impact on the game. And when it comes down to it, I hate picking because sometimes there's a lot of 3 players that I feel equally impacted the game. And I hope at some point during the last little bit of the game that the game figures it out for us and it allows us to pick it,
Yeah, because you're like, well, we only got 1 shirt and 3 people we got to pick here.
Right.
we got one free pizza voucher from Papa John's. Thank you, Kyle Betts. And the worst part is I feel for defenders the most. Because goalies, yes, you get some stats. Forwards, obviously. Midfielders, yes. But defenders, it's more of a team thing and not necessarily one person making the real big difference. And if it is, it's really easy to spot.
Right. And if you're involved in the game as a defender a whole lot, it's either your team's you're playing defense a lot, so on your half the field, which means that another player on the other team has a chance to get stats on you.
Mm-hmm.
But unless it's a close game, 1-1, It doesn't mean they don't impact the game. That's far and away because I think defense wins championships.
Oh,
but
absolutely.
it is just it does hurt. It is harder to pick them out of anybody else.
Yeah, and hopefully we do a good enough job. I know that's one of the knocks on us is that in our first couple years we did go for the shiny objects, and yes, we did see good defenders too, but it's hard to not give it to a midfielder who's really controlling the team and the game.
Right, and we hear you, and by we I mean Tim hears you.
Which brings us to players to watch. How do we know? Well, first year is a lot tougher, but we had some really good players. We had the Nick Novaks, Noah Hudas, Vasily Gentis on the boys' side. Gabe Ottewill. On the girls' side, Macy Toporsa was up there. Trying to blink for the first couple. I know Ava Yanucci was there last year. So some players that you're like, hey, they make All-State the year before. We're going to go take a look at it and make sure there's no anomalies there. But yeah, they're going to get on the players to watch. And we start off with 5, and then we go to 10. And as we watch more games, and we kind of want to see them live to put them on the list, unless it's like no-brainer. The other thing that we do, I'm sorry, Dan. The other thing we do is we call coaches and we text coaches. And it's never, hey, how's your player doing? It's, who did you play against this year that stood out? So if you can ask any of the coaches that you guys know, anyone who's listening, see if that's true. It is, because 10 out of 10 times I'll call like a Phil Simone or Greg Mitchell and be like, hey, you guys had a pretty good win yesterday. You guys played Glen Oak. Who was really good on there? And he'd give me some names. And I'd call Phil Simone from Campfield. You guys also played Glen Oak. Who's good there? And if he gives me the same names, it makes sense.
Yeah. And, going into from year to year, there's turnover. And, we normally have like a good list of like 10-ish players on both boys and girls side that we know going into the year, they're probably going to be towards the top of the list. And then anybody we add to that list, unless we're there seeing them in the flesh, like you said, we rely on help from parents, normally coaches more than parents, because parents always have parent goggles on. But if a coach tells us this person is good, like you said, it doesn't mean that they automatically make the list. It means that we're going to go make a point to go see them play as long as we can. And it is hard to put something on the list that we haven't seen play, but it has happened. But like I said, the more help, the more input we get, the easier it is. More input we get from coaches, I should say, the easier it is for us to do our job and put the right kids on the list. Yeah,
and usually parents are never going to tell us that, yeah, my kid didn't do well in this game. My kid, it's going to be positive for. They're like their PR director, and 99% of the time we don't listen to parents.
But sometimes a parent will tell us about a player that their team just played.
Correct.
And that holds weight because they're not going to say like, hey, this player was awesome. Go look at him.
This player made my daughter look terrible. It's only happened once. Top 5 list. Again, top 5 go along with the preseason previews and the playoffs. We kind of just go based off of who's beaten who, and quality wins hold more weight than a loss.
Right.
Because you might have a bad day. Someone might be sick. Flu might be going through your team. Someone might be ineligible. Someone's, family member passed away. But if you have some quality wins, 3 or 4 of those and 1 loss, that holds more weight than no quality wins and no losses.
Right. And I think this is one of the areas where the 3 of us kind of differ on what we see. And I think our difference of opinion works out to give a better product. Because in my head, when we're trying to figure out top 5, I figure out if the 2 teams were to play each other, or if the 5 teams play each other, who would be the best team? And I kind of figured out that way, which is kind of unfair to teams that like lower level teams. Why I say lower level, like Division 4 or 5,
higher divisions,
like right. And higher division, not lower. It's kind of unfair, but you can't discount when they beat everybody on their schedule. It doesn't discount how good of a team they are, because the only thing they can do is beat everybody that they can.
So, prime example, last year, I see a cookie rolling around in your back.
There is a cookie.
Cookie the cat making an appearance.
Yeah.
Beaver Local last year.
Yeah.
We're like, okay, they're good, but some of the teams are playing West Virginia. We don't quite know who exactly their competition is. And then they beat Poland. And then they beat, I want to say they did really well against United, maybe. I'm drawing a blank here, but they played very well, and they went in and beat some pretty good teams, and it showed in the playoffs.
Yeah. That Poland, that was one of the more surprising moments we had last year, is when I think we were at a game. I forget what game we were doing when we got the score update that Poland lost to Beaver Local. And we talked about Beaver Local being on our top list, but we just couldn't put them there because of who they were playing. And then when they beat Poland, it was like they're automatically on.
There's their quality win.
We need to make a point to go see them play.
Which we haven't. But this year, that is on our list of teams that we definitely want to go see. and want to watch.
Out of a grand scheme of things, that logistically, that is probably the hardest school for us to go see.
Yes.
Unless they play a team closer to us, and they play a lot of times earlier in the day, and our work schedules do not allow us to go see a 5:00 game very often.
That's correct. So we do want to see. We did do some smaller schools. I remember some Columbiana, some Jackson Milton.
Mm-hmm.
I want to say Liberty, Springfield. Yeah. So we've seen some smaller schools, but for the most part, it's the area schools and it's also a lot of schools that interact with us, that have us, that we ask a question on our social media and they'll respond to us like, okay, so they're listening. We want to make sure that they're heard and we see the teams that they're talking about. We got 2 more to go. Showcase rosters. Now this one's the biggest one.
Yeah.
Because we have, what do we do? 36 on each side? Was that 15, 16 each? 32.
Yeah. And I think we could have made a case for an extra 10 after that.
Yeah.
That was probably the longest we discussed as far as, because I say we had like the first like 10, 15, 10, 12 easy. Then we got to the end there and there wasn't a whole lot, separating player 14 through player 17, to be honest with you. And that's one of the things you feel the best. You don't want to make it so everyone gets an award, so it makes it less special.
Correct.
But you want to make sure you reward all the players that have earned the reward.
Yes. And each year I go back after we make the list and we talk about everything. So we're like, oh, what about this one person? And we're like, oh, man. And it always, it keeps me up at night.
Yeah.
It'll be one of those things where you're like, man, I feel terrible, but there's nothing I could do right now.
Isn't it funny? We make say if we make 14, I don't know, 15 decisions correctly, like 100% correct. And that one we make a mistake, not a mistake.
No, I know what you mean.
We overlook somebody else. It feels like we did something. It feels like we're wrong for whatever reason.
But it feels personal. I feel terrible. I feel like I want to call the person and apologize, but that would mean nothing. They'd probably
hang up.
Yeah. As far as our awards go, let's take a look at them. Player of the year, self-explanatory. The one that has the biggest impact on their team and has the most talent. Now, there are players who are physical and who are fast, but might not have the foot skills.
Yeah.
We're looking at the total package. So
I think every year we've done this, I think it's pretty much the top player has separated himself. I think it's been close, but I think each time the top player has been, no doubt about it, separated himself.
Yeah.
And to me, that's the easiest award to pick.
I agree. And I like how we do the awards, and we've done this since the beginning, is we hand out the finalists first. 3 people that are very close to say, hey, and then we let the season conclude because those 3 players are going to do well in the playoffs, and we just want to see for each. Player of the year we have the Golden Boot that just goes to who scores the most goals. I remember Gabe Altiwill was Division II, won it our first year. Last year we had a freshman girl win it, Peyton Dunn out of Beaver Local. We have our Playmaker of the Year, which is almost like a midfielder award, someone who makes things happen, who has that creativity, who doesn't just play within the confines of this is what coach told me to do every time the ball comes to me. This is what I have to do. They have creativity and they make the game more interesting. And then we have our Brick Wall Award for defenders and goalies.
Yeah.
And Coach of the Year.
Mm-hmm. Coach of the Year.
New referee of the year, which I think is awesome. I think referees get a bum rap. Some deserve it. Most don't.
Yeah, unfortunately, the ones that do deserve it kind of taint the picture for everybody else. It's just like we said. If we make one bad decision out of the 14, we feel like we didn't make a mistake. And if you're a referee, you make 90% great calls, 10% like I don't know. Let me say like 8%. I don't know, and 2% just flat wrong. 2% is the only thing people are going to be will only be talking about. And that is fun though. It does give a different perspective because we've all been coaches. We're all players. Now we're like a neutral site looking at everything, the whole total package. And we kind of see, we hear the parents complaining about a call sometimes. We're like, we kind of saw it the same way as the referee did.
Yeah. A lot more than I thought I would.
Yeah. Isn't that weird how the tables turn?
Take the emotion out of the game, take the need to like get a reaction or get your way in the game and see it, impartially and it changes a little bit.
Yeah, it's like the table flips on you.
Is that done on purpose? So, I'll flip a table again, man. But Saki Yatz's got the one this year. It's our first time handing out actual hardware for it. Before we just kind of mentioned, here's some referees that have done well. I think it's awesome for the fact that referees never get a attaboy. Referees never get a pat on the back. until this year. I know, yes, they do have the award from the coaches, but it also seems like they're doing this, and the coaches are doing this maybe to get something in return.
Yeah.
Maybe not, subconsciously they are like, yeah, I'm going to make this guy, he's doing a lot of my games, let me make him or her happy so that next year, things will go better.
Yeah, I almost feel like the word from a coach is not saying this is what it means, but from a referee standpoint, it's like, oh, you're the least asshole of the year of a ref.
I can't say it better. That was perfect. Yeah. So, how do we do these things? The only other thing that I can think of is with our players to watch. I got my list over here, so I keep looking. Our players to watch, we do about 5 to 10 every week. And if we skip a week, we do double up the next week because it's like, hey, we haven't seen enough players. We don't want to put anybody on because once they're on, we don't take them off. They usually are those players that will be in that game, showcase game at the end of the year.
Yeah, I agree.
But yeah, we had people that were like, no, so-and-so deserves, how is this not on your list? Like, we only put 5 out. There's going to be 32 at the end of this. Just take a chill.
And we may have not seen them play yet in person.
Yes. And so we're like, hey, we're not going to put them on the list because what if we get there and it's all smoke and mirrors and they're just stats are inflated because they goal poach the whole time.
Yeah. Which has happened, does happen.
Yeah. There's every showcase game, there's probably 1 or 2 that will never admit to their face or anyone else. But there's 1 or 2 that we're like, maybe they shouldn't have made it there. Maybe they're just kind of, the game's a little bit above them right now as we're watching it play out.
Yeah.
So, all right, we're going to go to our first commercial break. We're doing this on video, so what do we do now? I just stand here and...
Pitchman is brought to you by...
Welcome back to Papa John's. I'm hand stuffing this mozzarella to make our epic stuffed crust pizza. Epic. Hey, we're making you an epic stuffed crust pizza for $13.99.
Better ingredients, better pizza, Papa John's.
Did you miss the last Youngstown Phantoms hockey game? Catch up with the Dump and Chase podcast.
He's a pretty big guy, and he was the only one with hair. I am, of course, talking about assistant coach Brandon Gawkin. Brandon, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for all your support. It's great, the stuff that you guys do and how much coverage you bring. I know we appreciate it a lot as a coaching staff, and our guys really appreciate it. So thank you so much for putting all this hard work in.
The Dump and Chase podcast, Wednesdays at 5, right here on Western Reserve Radio and the iMedia One Network.
I'm Tim.
And I'm Dan.
And Chris. This is Pitchmen, the Steel Valley Soccer Podcast.
We cover all things high school soccer in the Mahoning Valley.
Catch our episodes on Spotify.
Or visit our website for the skill.
In the back of the net.
The teams.
Mitchell with the shot. Goal! Finds the back of the net.
And the soundboard.
Is the best net. For more information, go to steelvalleysoccer.com.
All right, back from commercial. We're going to talk, once a month, we're going to talk about strange rules that you may or may not see coming in. And there's one that I saw on TikTok. There's a referee that always talks about calls here and there. And we might start to do that throughout the season if people send us, like, is this the right call or not, and discuss it on video. But the one rule is that if a fan who's standing behind the goal, which is why you don't let fans or anyone stand behind the goals, the opposing team's coming down about to shoot and score, and he jumps in and saves the ball from going into the net. What's the call there if you're the referee? Dan, what do you say?
You blow the whistle really hard and say, get the F off the field. It's since the ball did not cross the line, doesn't matter what stops the ball from crossing the line. It must cross the line in order for it to be a goal. So it's a no goal. I remember distinctively when I was taking courses for refereeing that they said if a dog breaks off a leash and goes to stop the ball, as the ball comes in and the dog stops, it's not a goal and you play it dead. And that's never happened to me before, but TikTok showed us things like that has happened.
Yeah, even the guy, he said that originally he said that, no, you can award the goal if you're the referee because it was going to go in. And then he came back and said, I was wrong.
Correction. That's right. I made a mistake in a video I posted last night, and I always am transparent when I make a mistake. I've learned something new. I actually went to a regional referee. He gave me some bad information, sent me the wrong way. So I made a mistake. I thought it was one thing. Okay, long story short. Okay, this was a play where a ball was being dribbled to the goal, and right before the ball was going in, a spectator runs onto the pitch and kicks the ball away. So what's the restart? Do you award the goal, or is it something else? In the Q&A in IFAB, they specifically describe this. The fan enters the field of play, kicks it away. Can a goal be awarded? Yes, if the ball is going into the goal, which is what happens here, but the ball also enters the goal. Okay, it has to go across the goal line in the goal for you to be able to award it. If the ball doesn't actually go in, there is no awarding of the goal. It's not like goaltending in basketball or a penalty try in rugby. Okay, we don't do that in soccer. And the restart, if the interference is by an outside agent, is a drop ball. That's right, it's a dropped ball. Painful, and that drop ball goes to the goalkeeper because every drop ball in the penalty area is for the goalkeeper. So I'm sorry I led you astray. I was confused. The laws of the game are written really weird in that Q&A, but now you know. If a fan enters here, which they should never be back there, and they kick the ball away, prevent it from going in the goal, if it hasn't actually gone into the goal, the restart is a drop ball.
Yeah, the strange rule. Hopefully no one ever sees this happen in our area. And that's why if you ever are standing behind the goal and the referee's like, hey, get away from the goal, you can't stand back there. And you're like, what? I'm just standing here. This is Hubbard High School. There's a fence right here. I can stand where I want. No, you can't, because if someone wants to jump out and affect the game, it really throws a wrench. And I'm sure that if that ever were to happen and that referee does not award a goal, I can imagine the entire place erupting.
I think you're absolutely right. I hope we're there when it happens, though.
Yes, I hope we have the camera working and it's streaming perfectly. But so that's our rule of the month. We should have like a little sound effect for that. Rule of the month.
Rule of the month.
Yeah,
and there it is.
But you probably hit the wrong button anyway.
Yeah,
So.
I probably would. All right, last thing we want to talk about in our last about 8 minutes we have here, because we try to keep it 30 minutes, is what have we learned in our 5 years that we've been doing this? What are some strange things that happen? What are some other things? The first one I want to talk about is that when we talk about large school and small school, that there are some talented players from both sides. You look at a Maddox Andrea, who was, player of the year in the state of Ohio in Division 5, but he could have went on any team in this area and been the best player.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It doesn't happen all the time, but I completely agree with you. The difference between small and big is 100% depth. Every once in a while, you'll find a team that has an outlying that just has everything, but for the most part, good player is a good player. It's just how many of those players you have on your team.
Yeah. So you go Division 1, Division 2, Division 3, you're going to need 5 to 8 really, really good players to make a run in the playoffs.
Yep.
But in Division 5, if you have 4 or 5, a little bit less, you might have a good enough chance to get there. Not always.
Absolutely.
But in injuries, some bigger teams, because they have more pool to get from, they might be able to sustain some injuries and still produce a good product. But if like Maddox Andrea, if a couple other players on that United team went down, let's say 5 of their starters went down, it would be really rough.
Yeah, look at JFK. They had, 3 subs when we saw them play?
Yeah.
There's no margin for error there when that happens.
So that's one of the things we learned, that, talented players come from every type of school. It's just the depth that might not always be there on the smaller schools. Dan, do you have another one?
Yeah, this is something I think you and I can both agree with, is both has hit home for us. And in coaching, the hard part isn't coaching the players, it's dealing with the players' parents.
Mm-hmm.
And for parents, I think sometimes it. Otherwise, other ones, I think this is going to be a tough pill to swallow. You're always, as a coach, you're always trying to do the right thing for the program. You're never trying to make individuals happy. You're trying to make the whole program happy. And parents see their players through parent goggles. I have kids. I understand. I know that happens. And you want what's best for them always. But God damn, do they make things hard when they don't need to be hard.
Well,
I've never experienced where coming off of a winning like 6-0, coming over there smiling, and then getting hit, boom, with playing time. Why did my son play? You're like, get away from me. Let me enjoy this, please.
Yeah. There's not a single coach, because a coach has to make decisions, not just based on one incident. He has to make it for everybody on the team, and not just for that year. No coach is like, I'm just going to be here for a year, so who cares what I decide? Every coach wants to be there for as long as they can. Yeah. So when you make a decision, you're going to make it for this year, for next year, and the year after. So it's difficult to deal with them. And parents and playing time, no coach is ever going to take a kid who's an amazing player, who's a hard worker, and say, nope, go sit on the bench. I want someone who's screwing around the whole time on the field.
Right.
Or I'm friends with them, so I'm going to put this kid who might not be as good on the field just because I want to get my buddy's kid in. That very rarely happens. Not saying it doesn't.
No. The only time it does happen is when they play for a club team that you might be involved with.
Agreed. But so yeah, every coach is there to put the best product out there.
Yeah.
And parents don't see usually what happens at practice. Parents don't see how their interaction with their teammates. And I just saw a quote online that was great. It says, it's better to be a great teammate than a great player. because you're bringing everyone up around you. The level of play is raised because of you being a good teammate.
That's probably said by someone who's not a great player, but I know what you're saying.
It'd be great to have both. Don't get me wrong. I was fortunate enough to coach Blake Baker. You remember Blake? Yeah. He was awesome. He was the first in line. He was a vocal leader. He never took a play off. He always worked his hardest. Yes, I'm going to be a favorite of his. He's doing everything he can. I'm going to favor the people that are doing their hardest, trying their hardest, doing their best.
Yeah, when your best players are your hardest workers, that just has a cascade effect of greatness that just flows through the rest of the team. Mm-hmm. If they see someone who's working their butt off time in and time out, the young kids, the freshmen, sophomores are going to see that and try to emulate exactly what he's doing.
And they're going to be like, I don't want to be the reason why we make a mistake and we lose a game. I want to make that person that I look up to, that senior player as I'm a freshman, I want to make them happy. I want to make coach happy. I want to make my parents happy. So hard work is the number one thing that I see. And for some reason, parents, they're like, well, my kid we're out there. He's at every practice. Well, so is every other kid. My kid's, he's lifting in the offseason. So is a lot of 90% of the teams. So whatever you think your player's doing, there's probably more than half of the players that are playing in our area doing the exact same thing, if not more.
Absolutely.
So yeah, parents are usually the problem. Coaches can sometimes be referees, maybe one or two, but on the majority, parents really like to cause problems.
Yeah,
they like to, and we always say the old adage that I remember when I played basketball as well. I wasn't getting a lot of playing time. My dad said, "You just got to try harder. You got to get better. You got to put that coach in a position where they have to keep you on the court or the field, or else they're hurting the team." And that's what I did, and it worked.
Yeah, and not all parents are bad by any means, but there are some terrible ones.
The terrible ones are just screaming louder than anyone else.
Yeah, I have all these memories running through my head right now. So let's change the subject.
All right. So we do talk about good referees are good communicators. That's another one that we've learned a lot of. Is that if a ref makes a call and everyone's like, "What is the call?" I remember, again, being a player and a coach, that you ask the referee, "Hey, what was that call?" And they try to give you a yellow card because you're questioning them. You're like, "I'm just questioning what happened. I didn't see it. I was talking to another player," something, just communicating with people, even the hand signals, so that people in the stands can figure out. I remember I saw it was an old YSU football program, and at the bottom it had all the hand signals for the referees so that people in the stands can understand what was going on. And I think that if we did that, that'd be amazing.
There's one hand signal that everyone understands what's going on.
Verticality.
No, I think we had a referee back in the day, Tom Sutcliffe, and he was the person that explained as you went on. If you're a referee, stand on your call. If you make it, and he was one that's like, "I didn't see that. I apologize." Yeah. If you just have that constant communication, like you said, it makes you feel better at least. I mean, if you think the call went against you, the way that he handled it at least made you feel better about it.
Yeah, at least you're like, hey, he's not perfect. He said that he was here and he was blocked. He couldn't see it. Boom. That's what else do you want from the guy? But if they say, "Don't ask me questions, coach," and keep running away, or they're, people in the stands consistently start yelling at him. But I think this also applies to coaches too. If you're a good communicator, you probably get rid of some of those problems that you normally would have if you just kind of don't talk to your parents.
I think that's something that goes around full circle and the whole, actually, life in general.
Yes. I got another one too, as we're rapid firing through here. I think that the people that we have dealt with, as far as coaches, referees, Scott McMillan, Josh McMillan, Sarah Hodgson, whose name, I always mispronounce her name.
Got it right.
Did I get it right this time? Hey. I think that even down to the athletic directors, at about 95% of the places we go, we get there and like, "Hey, do you guys need a water? You guys can sit up here. What's best? Oh, here's an outlet." And they're the most friendly, happy people I've ever met.
Oh, it's so refreshing to have that, because when you're on a coach, you feel like you're getting yelled all the time. The referee's there. He's getting yelled at all the time. But how many times when we go to these places, we talk to people that we maybe have played with who now have players playing in the games that we are that we're covering, and everyone says, "We wish we had something like this when we played."
Mm-hmm.
We hear that all the time, and that makes me feel good that we're doing a good job. And when people come up and talk to us, it means that they really care. And sometimes we get criticism online. It's if we didn't get criticism, that means that people didn't care.
Yeah,
and people care what we do, and people like what we do, and it shows with, like you said, it makes you feel good when you sit down, even if they just bring you a basic water.
Mm-hmm.
They at least care about what you're doing up there.
Yeah, they make you feel wanted and appreciated. And again, 95% of the places, there's a place or two that they're just like, oh yeah, go wherever you want, but not there, but not there, but not there. We can't help you.
No, why don't you walk all the way across the stadium to this side, please?
One of the last ones that I have is, it's sort of the Wild West when it comes to rules, stats, awards, and record keeping.
Mm-hmm.
For instance, at any given school, is it set out what it takes to get a letter? Some places you have to have 16 halves. Some places you have to play in, 8 games. Some places are, you were on the team, here's a letter.
Yeah.
As far as records go, I guarantee people listening to this, if you are from a school you played or your kid plays or your coach or your ref, from wherever you went to high school, do you know any of the top goal scorers, assists, saves, best teams? Like no one really keeps track. There's no place to find this information. Thank God for OSSCA, or else we would know nothing.
Right. No, you're right. And I think that is an interesting conversation about, as a head coach, you have stats written down. It depends on who's taking stats. You have to agree to what's an assist, what's a save. And every team may have a different definition of that. I think we've already covered that in the podcast, but there is no general, in basketball, if you take a shot and you make it, it's 1 for 1. If you miss, it's 1 for 2. It's really easy. If you miss if you don't complete a pass, it's an 0 for 1 pass.
Yeah.
Soccer is like one of the only sports. It's like, it's a shot. Was it on goal? Is it a save? Was it really assist?
Yeah.
It's weird how, if it's a goal, it's pretty easy to score that. That's no doubt about it. But everything else, when it boils down to assists, saves, and who gets the letter, it is so gray, depending on where you're playing at.
And so we put recently, we put on our website, on our statistics records book page, we put what our guidelines were for each of the stats. It's actually the NCAA guidelines as to that, and it's down there if you guys want to take a look at it. But I just got done. I talked to Chris Castillo, former Fitch player whose dad was, won 4 district championships. Went
Rigo.
Rigo, great guy, owned a Mr. Hero. But he said that at his parents' house, they still have all these stat books from the years he coached, from like 93 to 2002. I was like, well, the school didn't want that? There's no place. He goes, no one wanted it. No one cared. I was like, oh, he probably just filled out a sheet. He goes, my dad didn't. So we have to base it off of, does that former coach, still have the stats for his era to be able to kind of compile all of this together?
Yeah, I have my stats.
Well, each individual probably does, with a couple added maybe here and there. But
that's why you fill it on OSSCA. It does it for you.
Right? That's why it'd be nice. And that's why I love that website. And kind of, as much as, Max Preps is probably overall a bigger entity, I think having OSSCA is very, very important.
I agree. What's it take for you to be a letter? You want to talk about that?
We'll talk about that real quick. For me, it's 16 halves. That means that you played in like 8 full games. Figure season 16, you get in half the games. And that's if you get in for 10 seconds, that's a half.
Mm-hmm.
What about you, Dan?
It's for me, it's 8 halves. It's a quarter of the season, but I never threw somebody in just to throw them in, like you said, for 10 seconds. If I'm putting you in the game, I'm entrusting you to be in there to make a mark on the game, not just get you time. So I always thought, if I'm going to put you in, I'm going to put you in for 10 minutes, some time, and it's 8. So I never just put anybody in just to put them in to get them a letter. I put them in when they're ready, if they're ready to do it. That's why I made my requirement 8.
And then, you're right, but for me, it's more of a, hey, if it's coming down towards the end of the season and this guy's been working hard, I can get him in for 5 minutes here. I can get him in for 10 minutes there. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
We're a little different there.
Yeah.
Was there another cookie?
No. That's someone decorating a cookie.
Oh, I didn't hear it, so it's awesome. Last one that I have is just that this is unbelievably time consuming.
Oh, yeah.
Like, it's not as bad as being a head coach. I'll say that much. But with, everything that goes into it, that especially in the fall seems to have like a million things going on at once. But for as time consuming as it is, this is so worth it. And I love doing this.
Yeah. And you do the graphics, so it's even more time consuming. I feel like actually, I'm not going to say what I was going to say, because then my role will change. But I feel like I'm just there in pretty face. You know what I mean? I give my opinion on stuff, and that's what I do. And
no, but it has worked out. All the equipment that we were able to purchase from all of our sponsors that we want to thank, it has all worked out. Never really have we gotten anything and been like, oh, this is totally the wrong thing. We need to buy a second, very expensive one of these.
Mm-hmm.
So, knock on wood. But we're here in the studio, down in the Steel Valley studio, and I see
that first game where the gimbal broke and it was like,
oh my God. I was going to delete that off of our YouTube page, but I decided to keep it because it's going to be like, hopefully in about 5-6 years from now, when we can really go after a couple really nice pieces of equipment. And we look back at us holding the phone up to the glass, like our shoulders are on fire.
Oh man, that was terrible.
Or like the first games we tried the first year, it was just a live tweeting of what was happening. We didn't have the capabilities to film it. So I'd go to games or we'd be at games and be like, oh, that person scored. Let's put a little like name and time they scored. And here we go.
Yeah.
But we are a 3-man crew. Yes, we get some help from all the coaches and all the people involved, parents, players, give us information. But for the most part, we're 3 guys who are just spending our every spare minute in the fall and the late summer to try to make something special for kids who are really working hard. And, my daughter plays SVA, and seeing her from, club travel down to AJSL, how much time, money, and effort and like love for the game that they put into it. I think it's worth it to do this, and I hope that we continue to do this and have the capabilities until I'm in my like 80s.
Steel Valley Soccer. We're just a few guys who like soccer.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Pitchmen, a Steel Valley Soccer production. For more information, go to steelvalleysoccer.com.